Hi everyone, welcome to ArtStoryLab. My name is Hejin. For the last few weeks, I've been deeply immersed in the developments following the senseless murder of George Floyd at the hands of 4 ex-police officers in Minneapolis, the city where I live. Yet another innocent black life unjustly taken away in my own community really shook me to the core, and I think it's safe to say that many of you watching this right now have been feeling the same sense of grief and outrage at this atrocity as I have. The despair I feel regarding the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, and countless other innocent black lives before them led me to reflect on my own privilege as a Korean immigrant, and how to be a better anti-racist and a better ally for black and indigenous people of color. Black Lives Matter protests happening all around the world have also motivated me to revisit historical representations of racial minorities in the West. In looking at photos of protesters, an artwork from the 18th century came to my mind, the anti-slavery medallion produced in Great Britain in the late 1780s. This small object is made of a type of ceramic material called jasperware, invented in the 1770s by an English inventor and entrepreneur, Josiah Wedgwood. A brilliant businessman, Wedgwood created elaborate stoneware pieces in the fashionable neoclassical style to appeal to the growing middle-class consumers. The small ceramic medallion, measuring just over an inch in height, is based on the seal of the Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade, established in 1787 in Britain with 12 white men. This anti-slavery society used visual images as a tool to gain support for its cause of ending slave trafficking. The seal, designed in 1787, shows a male African slave with manacles around his wrist with chains connected to his ankles, kneeling with one knee on the ground and looking up with both hands held up. The motto, "Am I not a man and a brother?" is inscribed around the oval frame. Josiah Wedgwood, who was a prominent member of the Abolition Society, took the seal and adapted it into a medallion that imitated neoclassical cameos. By this time, his successful pottery manufacturing firm had already produced numerous jasperware cameos of notable historical and contemporary figures such as these, which were fashionable among middle and upper class consumers. Wedgwood made thousands of small jasperware medallions bearing the seal of the Abolition Society and distributed them for free, all out of his own pocket. And the anti-slavery medallions became popular accessories for white British consumers. Men incorporated them into their snuff boxes, women made them into brooches, bracelets, and hairpins to communicate their support for the abolitionist campaign. In the words of the scholar Cheryl Finley, abolitionism became fashionable through these Wedgwood medallions. They were so popular that imitations popped up all around. For example, this French version with the same motto in French. Along with the notorious image of the slave ship carrying legions of enslaved Africans packed into the cargo deck across the Middle Passage, the image of the kneeling slave was the most powerful visual tool for the abolitionist campaign. Indeed, Benjamin Franklin, who was the president of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, received these cameos from Wedgwood as a gift to distribute them in America, and wrote that he was sure that they, quote, may have an effect equal to that of the best written pamphlet in procuring favor to those afflicted people. The Abolition Society seal continued to represent the movement well into the 19th century and across the Atlantic, appearing also on banners during the Civil Rights Movement in America. Although the image of the kneeling slave was a timeless emblem of the fight against slavery and racism, it was a cultural product very much rooted in its historical moment of the late 1700s. Let's take a look at the medallion. We see the shackled slave kneeling and holding his hands up to the heavens. The motto, "Am I not a man and a brother?" is a rhetorical question that directly addresses the viewer's reason as it calls into question the barbaric practice of treating human beings as property. Meanwhile, the image of the kneeling slave diffuses the threat that the rhetorical question poses, presenting the slave as a meek, docile entity. Pleading for mercy, he bears no sign of resistance or rebellion. His pose comes from the tradition of depicting Christian supplicants who invoke God with their outstretched hands for divine intervention. But the kneeling slave isn't just asking God for help, he's asking the white people looking at the medallion for help. Many critics have noted that this image puts the black figure in an inferior position in the racial hierarchy, positing him and the whole category of enslaved Africans as helpless beings that need to be rescued by supposedly superior white Britons. It's worth noting that around the same time as abolition movement began in Europe, the pseudo-scientific theories regarding the human race began classifying the hugely diverse population of the entire continent of Africa into the single race of blacks, an act that the scholar David Bindman has called conceptual enslavement. And that conceptual enslavement is still very much present in our times. Haven't we all heard at some point that Africa is not a country? This irony of the patronizing white benevolence built on racial hierarchy at the heart of the anti-slavery medallion also lays bare the paradox of the 18th century abolitionism. One of many factors that fueled the movement at this early phase was a growing cultural concern with sentimentality, that capacity to empathize with other people's suffering and shed tears for them as a measure of one's virtue. Being able to identify emotionally with African slaves' plight gave social and moral prestige to white Europeans. Whether these early abolitionists were sincere in their motivations or not is a moot point. What's more important for our discussion is that, simply put, it was cool for some middle and upper-class Britons to wear these anti-slavery medallions because their pity made them look good. It sounds very familiar. Do the terms optical allyship and performative activism ring any bells? And the anti-slavery medallion certainly speaks to that white desire. The choice of medium with black material modeling the slave's figure in low relief on white stoneware ground highlights his blackness while flattening his individual features. He appears as a silhouette, a shadow figure, and, as a historian Mary Guyatt has noted, a figure standing in for all black slaves rather than an individual with his own agency or will. But in recent years, the kneeling pose has returned to our mainstream culture with a very different meaning. The San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick and his colleagues began taking the knee during the national anthem in NFL games beginning in 2016 as a peaceful protest against police brutality and oppression of African Americans. And in the days following the murder of George Floyd in May 2020, participants in Black Lives Matter protests all over the world have been taking the same pose, not with clasped hands pleading for white sympathy, but with raised fists to signify solidarity and resistance for oppressed minorities. The kneeling protesters of Black Lives Matter movement are taking back the pose and repurposing it as a powerful expression of their will to change the status quo. The ultimate function of the Wedgwood anti-slavery medallion did come to fruition when the British Parliament ended slave trade in 1807 and finally abolished slavery in 1833. But the pernicious racism, which built its theoretical foundation and took powerful hold of the Western mainstream culture in the 18th century, continues to torment us. As we take up the fight for a more just and equitable society today, I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you think about the image of the kneeling black figure on Wedgwood medallions and its new message for the Black Lives Matter protests? What meanings do these depictions of black people bear on our history and our path forward? Share your ideas and questions in the comment section below. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. See you next time on ArtStoryLab.